I'm in love with this man. I don't care, bitch. I don't care. Call me stupid. I will be stupid, bitch. I'll be stupid in love.
Joining us at 5, I'm Ray Gazaway.
And I'm Deborah Knapp. Melendez's boyfriend, Kirkland Warren, is a person of interest in this case. K2's Emily Gersh is at the Clark County Courthouse. So, Emily, what do advocates say went wrong here?
Well, I spoke with Michelle Bart, the president and CEO of the National Women's Coalition Against Violence and Exploitation. She says Kirkland Warren's criminal record shows he was an extreme risk of lethality to Melendez, and she doesn't believe he should have been released from jail earlier this month.
On the morning of March 22nd, 2023, a driver traveling along a rural road near Washougal, Washington, noticed something strange on the side of the road. At first glance, the shapes appear to be mannequins, stiff, motionless, oddly positioned near the brush. He drove past, but something didn't sit right. He turned around, parked his car, and walked closer. What he found was not plastic. Two bodies, one large, one small, were lying side by side. The adult was female. The child looked no older than 7. Both had visible injuries to the head. He dialed 911 without hesitation. Responding officers arrived quickly, confirmed the worst, and sealed off the scene. Identification came fast. The victims were Mishi Melendez and her 7-year-old daughter, Layla Stewart, both of whom had been missing for 10 days. They were last seen alive in Vancouver, Washington, getting into a car with Mishi's ex-boyfriend, Kirkland C. Warren. As investigators combed through the evidence, connections began to form. Surveillance footage, search warrants, ballistic reports, and witness interviews pointed in one direction. Warren had a criminal history, including a pending murder case in Arkansas. He had recently been arrested for shooting at Mishi's apartment, but was released. Now, with 2 bodies found and physical evidence piling up, the investigation turned into a homicide case. Blood, bullet casings, Layla's clothing, and DNA would build the state's case. The question wasn't just who did it. It was how someone with a violent record, a recent arrest, and active court restrictions had the access and the time to commit 2 murders and try to walk away unnoticed. This is the timeline, the investigation, and the conviction of how a mother and child vanished, and how law enforcement uncovered the truth behind the Roadside discovery. Welcome to True Crime Unmasked. Subscribe and hit the bell icon for more stories. The show where we uncover the disturbing crimes tearing communities apart and the haunting truths hidden behind closed doors. These are real stories, real individuals, real consequences. Stay tuned for more captivating stories. Now, let's dive in.
This particular case, of all the hundreds of cases I've worked on, this, by far, is one of the most painful cases. And somebody ranks a 31 with a maximum of only 18. That should be a huge red flag to keep them locked up. So shame on the county. Shame on the county.
Mishi Melendez was born in 1995 and was 27 years old at the time of her death in 2023. She lived in Vancouver, Washington, and was the mother of a young daughter named Layla Stewart. According to police reports and public records, Mishi's life appeared to center around raising her daughter and maintaining a stable lifestyle. At some point prior to her death, Mishi entered into a romantic relationship with a man named Kirkland C. Warren. Warren would later become the prime suspect in her murder. Over time, the relationship between Mishi and Warren reportedly turned abusive. Though the timeline of their relationship has not been precisely detailed by law enforcement, there is documented evidence indicating repeated disturbances involving Warren. The relationship eventually ended, but issues continued between them. After the breakup, Warren was accused of violent behavior. According to legal records, Mishi took steps to protect herself from him. This included filing for a no-contact or protection order, a legal measure that would have required Warren to avoid contact with her. Despite these legal measures, problems persisted. On March 2nd, 2023, just days before her disappearance, Warren was reportedly involved in a shooting incident targeting Mishi's apartment. He allegedly discharged a firearm into her residence, prompting another legal response and further illustrating the threat she faced. Law enforcement was involved, and Warren was arrested and charged in relation to this incident. Despite these ongoing issues and legal actions, Mishi was still seen with Warren after this event. On March 12, 2023, surveillance footage and witness testimony confirmed that Mishi and her daughter were last seen alive entering a vehicle with Warren. This fact raised significant questions during the investigation. Law enforcement later speculated that her continued contact with Warren may have been the result of coercion, manipulation, threats, or fear. These factors are common in domestic abuse situations, and victims often face complex barriers to fully separating from abusive individuals. Mishi's body was discovered 10 days later, on March 22, 2023, alongside her daughter's body in a wooded area near Washougal, Washington. Forensic examination confirmed she had died from a gunshot wound to the head. Her remains showed no immediate signs of other forms of physical trauma, according to the Clark County Medical Examiner. Mishi's interactions with Warren in the weeks leading up to her death, as well as her efforts to seek protection from him, became central components in the criminal case against him. Police used this background to establish motive and opportunity, ultimately charging Warren with aggravated murder and other related crimes. Layla Stewart was born in 2015 and was 7 years old at the time of her death. She was the only child of Mishi Melendez and was known to live with her mother in Vancouver, Washington. Reports indicate that she attended a local elementary school in the area. Specific details about her academic performance or school involvement were not released, but public records and family reports confirmed that she was close to her mother and appeared regularly in family photos and videos shared online before the incident. There was no mention of an active paternal presence in her life. No father figure was identified in law enforcement records, public statements, or media reports at the time of the case. Layla appeared to live full-time with her mother. Layla was last seen alive on the same day as her mother, March 12, 2023. Witnesses and digital evidence confirmed that she was with Mishi when both entered the car driven by Kirkland Warren. That would be the final confirmed sighting of the child while she was alive. Her body was found beside her mother's on March 22, 2023, in a remote area off a rural road in Washougal. Initial reports by first responders indicated the scene resembled an illegal dumping site. A passerby had spotted the bodies, and at first mistook them for mannequins. Upon closer inspection, authorities were called, and the scene was secured for forensic analysis. Kirkland C. Warren, the main suspect in this case, already had a criminal record before the events that led to the deaths of Mishi Melendez and her daughter, Layla Stewart. Warren was previously charged with murder in Arkansas. That case was still pending at the time of this incident. Despite facing such a serious charge in another state, he was not in custody. Instead, he was out of jail and able to move across state lines. At some point, Warren relocated from Arkansas to Washington state. He settled in the Vancouver, Washington area. There, he entered into a relationship with Mishi Melendez. However, the relationship later ended, and Mishi took steps to distance herself from him. Police reports later showed signs of escalating violence in their interactions. In early March 2023, just a few weeks before the bodies were found, Warren was arrested for shooting at Mishi's apartment. The exact date of the shooting incident was March 2nd, 2023. Mishi contacted law enforcement and reported that Warren had discharged a firearm outside her home. No one was hurt during that incident, but it showed a clear pattern of aggression. Following the shooting, Mishi filed for a no-contact order against Warren. She did this in an effort to keep him away from her and her daughter. Despite the request and his arrest, Warren was released from jail shortly after. He was not held for a long period of time, and no protective custody measures were taken to shield Mishi and Layla. Within days of his release, Mishi Melendez and her daughter Layla disappeared. The timeline indicates that there was less than 2 weeks between Warren's arrest and their disappearance. No additional legal action was taken to restrict Warren's movements or monitor his behavior after his release. The disappearance occurred on March 12, 2023. On that day, Mishi and Layla were last seen alive. Multiple sources, including family members and surveillance footage, confirmed that Mishi and her daughter were seen getting into a car with Warren. This was the last confirmed sighting of both individuals. After this, Mishi stopped replying to messages from family and friends. She did not answer phone calls. Layla was also not seen at school after this date. Over the following hours and days, attempts to reach Mishi were unsuccessful. Her phone appeared to be off, and no activity was reported on her social media accounts. Her car was also not located in her usual spots, and she missed appointments and responsibilities that she typically kept. Concerned by the lack of communication, Mishi's family reported her and Layla missing. The missing persons report was filed after multiple failed contact attempts. Law enforcement began investigating the case and initially treated it as a suspicious disappearance. Due to Warren being the last person seen with them, police listed him as a person of interest early in the investigation. However, he was not arrested at this stage because there was no physical evidence yet linking him to any crime. On March 22, 2023, 10 days after Mishi and Layla were last seen, their bodies were discovered by a passing driver in a rural area. The location was a remote roadside near Washougal, Washington, approximately 20 miles from Vancouver. The driver initially believed the bodies were mannequins, as they were positioned oddly and remained motionless. On closer inspection, it became clear they were human bodies, and the driver immediately contacted 911. Law enforcement arrived at the scene and confirmed the presence of two deceased individuals. The first body was identified as Mishi Melendez, and the second was her 7-year-old daughter, Layla Stewart. Investigators processed the scene and transported the bodies to Clark County Medical Examiner's office for autopsies. Forensic examination revealed the cause of death for both victims: homicide by gunshot wounds to the head. Detectives used these witness statements to establish probable cause and submitted affidavits for search warrants. A judge approved the search of Warren's home and his vehicle, a black Dodge Charger. The search of Warren's residence and car was conducted shortly after the discovery of the bodies. Police and forensic teams followed standard procedures while collecting evidence, photographing the scenes, and logging all items removed for examination. During the search of Warren's home, detectives located a .22 caliber firearm, ammunition, and multiple spent shell casings. The caliber of the recovered weapon matched the bullets used in the shootings of Mishi and Layla, according to the autopsy reports. Ballistics testing later confirmed that shell casings recovered at the dump site matched the firearm seized from Warren's home. In Warren's vehicle, a black Dodge Charger, investigators found several blood stains in the trunk area. Samples were collected and sent for DNA testing. The trunk also contained a plastic garbage bag with girls' clothing, later identified by family members as belonging to Layla Stewart. This clothing had been missing since the time of her disappearance. The Washington State Crime Lab processed the evidence within days. The DNA tests revealed the following. Blood found in the trunk of Warren's car matched Mishi Melendez and Layla Stewart. DNA found on Layla's clothing matched Kirkland Warren, confirming that he had direct contact with the child's clothing after her disappearance. Gunshot residue found on the driver's seat and Warren's clothes matched materials found on the victims. In addition to physical evidence, several witness statements placed Warren with the victims shortly before their deaths. One neighbor stated that on the morning of March 12th, he saw Mishi and Layla leaving Mishi's apartment with Warren. Another acquaintance said they spotted Warren's car near the area where the bodies were later found, around the same date and time frame. Police also obtained surveillance footage from traffic cameras showing a black Dodge Charger, matching Warren's car, traveling toward Washougal on March 12th and returning to Vancouver later that same day. These combined accounts and visual evidence supported the timeline that Warren was the last known person to be with both Mishi and Layla before their disappearance. After gathering sufficient physical evidence and cross-referencing witness reports, authorities obtained an arrest warrant for Kirkland Warren. The arrest was made in late March 2023, about 1 week after the bodies were discovered. Law enforcement located Warren at his residence. He did not resist arrest. He was immediately taken into custody and transported to the Clark County Jail in Vancouver, Washington. Officers followed protocol during the arrest and ensured that Warren was advised of his rights. Following the arrest, the Clark County Prosecutor's Office filed the following charges against Warren: 2 counts of first-degree murder, 1 for Mishi Melendez and 1 for Layla Stewart. This charge required the prosecution to prove premeditation and intent. 1 count of first-degree child molestation. This was based on forensic examination results and DNA evidence linked to Layla's body and clothing. One count of unlawful possession of firearm. Warren had a prior criminal conviction, making him legally prohibited from owning or carrying any firearm. The .22 caliber gun found at his home formed the basis for this charge. These charges were classified as Class A felonies, carrying the possibility of life imprisonment without parole if convicted. A bail hearing was held shortly after Warren's arrest. The prosecution argued that Warren posed a significant flight risk and a danger to the community, especially given his history of violent behavior and the seriousness of the charges. Warren's legal team did not contest the denial of bail. The judge denied bail and Warren was remanded to jail custody without bond pending trial. In September 2024, more than a year after the discovery of the bodies of Mishi Melendez and her 7-year-old daughter Layla Stewart, the main suspect in their murder case, Kirkland C. Warren, changed his plea during a court proceeding at Clark County Superior Court in Washington State. Warren had previously pleaded not guilty to all charges, including 2 counts of murder and 1 count of child molestation. However, in this hearing, he entered a guilty plea to aggravated first-degree murder and an Alford plea to first-degree child molestation. The aggravated murder charge stems from evidence showing that the killings were premeditated and involved multiple victims, which under Washington state law qualifies for the most severe sentencing category, aggravated first-degree murder. Prosecutors cited the facts that both victims were shot in the head and their bodies were disposed of in a remote area, showing deliberate and calculated action. The Alford plea is a legal mechanism that allows a defendant to accept the consequences of a guilty verdict without formally admitting guilt. In this case, Warren did not admit to molesting Layla Stewart, but acknowledged that the prosecution's evidence would likely persuade a jury to convict him. DNA evidence, medical findings, and other material presented in pretrial hearings strongly linked Warren to the charge, which formed the basis for the Alford plea's acceptance by the court. As part of the plea agreement, Warren was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. This sentence means he will spend the rest of his life in custody within the Washington Department of Correction system. Under state law, aggravated murder with no mitigating factors requires a life sentence. The plea deal removed the possibility of a lengthy trial and further appeals, effectively concluding the criminal process related to this case. Warren's sentencing hearing was scheduled and held in October 2024, just weeks after the plea agreement. During the hearing, the judge formally accepted the terms, citing the overwhelming nature of the evidence and the public interest in finalizing the case. The prosecutor's office confirmed that the plea agreement saved time, resources, and prevented the family of the victims from enduring the trauma of a full trial. Warren was not offered any chance of future release, parole hearings, or appeal rights as part of the plea arrangement. The state's position was firm. Warren would serve life without any opportunity for reduction or early release. At the sentencing hearing, several members of the victim's family were present in court and were granted the opportunity to give statements under Washington's victims' rights laws. Each speaker was allowed to address the court directly regarding the impact of the crimes committed against Mishi Melendez and Layla Stewart. A relative of Mishi spoke about the timeline of events between the victims' disappearance and the eventual discovery of their bodies. A family representative emphasized the emotional toll the case had placed on Mishi's close family members, particularly those who were involved in search efforts and later assisted law enforcement with evidence and timeline reconstruction. Another family member described the long-term effects of the murders on surviving relatives, specifically Layla's extended family members and school peers, who were informed of her death through official school counseling services and local school district communication teams. The court record shows that no impact statement was directed personally at the defendant during the hearing. Statements were made for official record and then closed at the request of the family, who chose to maintain privacy regarding certain details. Beyond the courtroom, there were no large-scale public protests or demonstrations in connection with the plea or sentencing. The case, while widely reported on local and regional media outlets, did not result in physical gatherings, memorial marches, or national-level media coverage during the plea and sentencing phases. However, discussions emerged on social media platforms, where individuals questioned the broader systems involved in the case. Commentators raised concerns about domestic violence prevention, protection order enforcement, and the ability of courts to monitor known offenders like Warren. Prior to the murders, Warren had a history of legal issues, including a pending murder case in Arkansas and an arrest in Washington for firing a gun at Mishi's apartment. Critics of the system noted that despite these serious indicators, Warren was granted bail and allowed to remain free before the double homicide took place. Some users on platforms such as Twitter, Reddit, and Facebook discussed the timeline of the case, pointing out that Warren's release from jail in early March 2023 came just days before Mishi and Layla disappeared. These discussions call for changes in how courts assess risk during bail hearings and raise awareness about the potential dangers faced by domestic violence survivors, even after securing protective orders. In response, some local advocacy organizations used the case as an example in presentations about strengthening victim safety procedures and risk assessment models. These references were limited to educational content and did not directly involve the family or court personnel. If this story touched you deeply and made you question what's real, be sure to tap the like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. For more gripping true crime stories that unravel the hidden truths behind heartbreaking cases, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss our latest episodes, investigations, and powerful conversations. Thank you for joining us on this journey to uncover the truth and fight for justice. Together, we can shine a light where it's needed most. Stay safe, stay alert, and we'll see you in the next story.